Hello, everybody. My clock says 3 o'clock, so let's start. Welcome, everyone. My name is Robin Johnson. I'm a trainer here at Career Force. Through a foible of our system, if I participate in chat at all, I'm going to be participating under the name of Shim Cook. It's a long, boring story, so I won't tell you why, but just know that if you see a message from Shim Cook, that's actually me. All right, I am joined today by my colleague Marnie Kerfman, and I'm just going to send it on over her way, and she's going to explain who she is and what she's going to be doing today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Robin. I am watching the chat today, so please let us know your questions and comments and put them attention to everyone, all participants, or if you want just Robin or I to see them, all panelists. All right, take it away, Robin.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marnie. Yeah, we had an amazing session this morning. There was so much discussion. There was so much energy. It was wonderful. I'll warn you right now, we didn't get a chance to get everything because there was just so much. But the cool thing was a lot of people reached out to their local career forces and continued the conversation after the webinar. So we'll be talking a lot about that. So if you're brand new to this process, you might be thinking first, what is Career Force? Well, basically, we are Minnesota's statewide resource for career and job seekers. Now, as I'm sure you know, due to COVID-19, our physical offices are closed at this time, but as I said, we encourage you to reach out to your local Career Force location, and we're going to send you a handy form that will give you all of the information on where the career forces are and how you can call them, how you can email them. And reach out for the individual assistance regarding resumes, regarding interviewing, regarding career exploration, and anything else that comes to mind. By the way, before I get too far into this, keep in mind that we also can help provide you with information on Veterans Employment Services, Dislocated Worker Program, and Vocational Rehabilitation Services. So we've got that on our plate as well. So basically, these webinars that we do, I tend to think are a great way to get you started. Go to careerforcemn.com and check out all the great additional resources we have. And we'll talk about that as we go on here. But let me just get some housekeeping done here. I will have a list of attendees for today. But for the purposes of unemployment, you will still need to mark in your unemployment account under the reemployment services that you have completed the Creative Job Search Workshop. And by the way, if you missed some, I just advanced my screen and that was too soon. Sorry. If you missed some, you can attend all the sessions online. So we're recording them and we've got them online in our virtual learning page. And so you can go back and you can check out anything that you missed. Now I advance the screen. Now today, facing unemployment at 50 or older, this is the 6th and final week of the Creative Job Search series of webinars. So if you're joining us for the very first time, we, as I said, are going to be recording these. We're going to be posting these on our virtual learning page, but there's actual other wonderful things there as well. On that page, you can look up job clubs that were led by Catherine Byers-Breet earlier on in the summer. And there's many other virtual learning opportunities that we'll be talking about. Say really quickly, because this might be of interest to you, we have a brand new class that is offered next Thursday from 1 o'clock to 2:30. It is Introduction to Microsoft Office Word. It is taught by our colleague Art Larson, who is fantastic. So you want to take a look at that. And then just FYI, if you've been watching our page, next week we're going to alternate our schedule a little bit with regarding our ongoing interviewing class and resume class. So instead of offering both of them in a single week, we're going to go back and forth between the two. So if you see something different there, that's what's happening. Okay, so one real quick note about my layout for this particular webinar. I want to spend the first half sharing my material with you. And during that time, I'm not going to be stopping for questions. But I realize questions are obviously going to come up. So please, as questions occur to you, I want you to put them into chat. Marnie is going to be organizing them. And then in the second part of the session, I want to dedicate to just talking about what you guys want to discuss. If you don't mind everybody seeing your questions, send it to everyone. As Marty indicated, if you prefer that just she and I see it, send it to all panelists. All righty? Cool. So let's jump into what Robin is going to accomplish today. If she does her job correctly anyway, this is what I'm shooting for leaving you guys with today. Number one, I'd like everybody to be able to create a basic T table that matches your skills with the needed skills listed in the job description. Now, I realize some of you know this. This is something that is included in more than one webinar. There is a method to my madness here, folks. This is vitally important with how resumes are being read these days, with how interviews are being conducted. If it's something you're already doing, fantastic. If it's not, you will benefit from doing this. And so that's why I reiterate it, because it is so important and helpful. The next thing I would like is to be able to have you guys be able to know at least 3 advantages of networking. And I know sometimes too, networking is another thing that people kind of go, oh, yeah. But this too is going to open up doors that simply looking at the job postings are not. Now, the next 2 kind of go together. I'd like you to be able to understand why and when it's important to leave off experience and qualifications that go beyond the company's needs. And understanding that is going to help you hugely in the next bullet point, which is to be able to avoid common pitfalls of being seen as overqualified. Because I know that's a stumbling block for most people who are experienced workers. So that's why we hit that one. And finally, I'd love it if you can successfully keep the momentum of the job search going for as long as it takes. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Lots of stuff for me to do, but let's start with some good news, because I suspect that if you're like most people in this situation, you're thinking there's nothing but bad news. So what I want to do here before we get to the good news is I want you to get used to typing things in the chat box, because that's where you're going to be feeding me questions. So before we get to the good news, I want to hear from you. And I would like you to give me just one word, just a single word. In a single word, I would like you to describe job search over 40 or 50 in one word. So if somebody says describe having to job search over the age of 40 or 50 in one word, what would you do? What would you describe it? Tedious, scary, overwhelming. By the way, I'm going to remind, don't use any words you wouldn't use in a professional interview. All right, trying, overwhelming, challenging. Work, yes. Useless, oh. Challenging, undefined. I like that. Stressful, hard, absolutely frustrating, tough, exciting. There we go. Creative, confusing. I love the fact that we're mixing it up a little bit. Doable, excellent. Frustrating, a job in and of itself. No kidding. Thank you, guys. These are great. This is fantastic. So here's my feeling. I'm not kidding myself. I don't have a little magic wand here that I'm going to be able to wave and have you guys leave in an hour feeling like, oh, it's going to be so easy. Everything has been solved. I'm not that deluded. But I hope if I do my job correctly today, I hope you're going to feel leaving like, wow, I was given some good practical information. And I am feeling that it's, it's a little bit more doable than I thought. So, and for those of you who are saying exciting, challenging, creative, fantastic. Hopefully we're going to keep that, that attitude going and build on it. Okay, now I promised you good news, and I'm going to deliver. A recent article in the Harvard Business Review gave us some hopeful news recently. Employers are looking to experienced workers to help them through the current crisis. So things are not normal, things are not usual, and consequently, employers are beginning to really rethink some of the assumptions that they were making about the workforce. They are implementing return to work programs, and these programs take the form of returnships. That's actually a thing, guys. Returnships. They're basically internships for those who are experienced, but they need their skills updated. Or they're instituting direct hire programming, and they are targeting specifically experienced workers. Why? Experienced workers can have the edge over their younger counterparts by being able to bring to the table institutional knowledge, education, work experience, mature perspective, stable life stage, dedication, loyalty, and an energy and enthusiasm for returning to work. Now, I've been working with experienced workers now for quite a while. And one of the things that I notice is they tend to forget to promote their soft skills. And by soft skills, in this case, I'm referring to things like just as simple as adaptability, emotional intelligence, mentoring, and cool headedness. And back when we were able to teach classes face to face, I used to do a thing in my class where I'd ask people, okay, whoever has mentored a new hire, raise your hands. And of course, almost everybody, their hands went up. I said, now, if you do not have the fact that you have mentored new hires on your resume, I want you to put your hands down. Almost every hand went down. And I think the reason that people forget to promote those skills is because they come so naturally. They don't think of them as formal skills. I half joke that if you're a parent, you know all about adaptability because that's your life. And you've done it and you've honed at the skills, but you don't think to actually put it on a resume when actually you should. The other thing to remember is that in reality, these skills are not always developed yet in younger workers. So you've got a young workforce that's coming in, that's great, and they know everything about technology, and they're fast, and they're wonderful, and it's great. But when it comes to things like making a client happy, when it comes to things like being adaptable, being able to stop on a dime and go a totally different direction when the client asks for it, they're not as good with that. And now in this crisis stage where everybody's trying to hang on to the customers that they have and build like never before, they need people with those soft skills. So that's a little bit of good news to start us off with, okay? Now I'm going to move on. Pardon me here. And what I want to do is I want to talk about what's changed. What has changed since you last looked for work? Now, if you have been out of the workforce for a significant amount of time, or you have been working in sustained employment for many years, you may find that resume writing, interviewing, and the job search itself has changed. What used to work may or may not work now. Now, I know that we've got several people too who work in fields where employment changes often. I know IT tends to be more of a kind of, sort of a gig environment, really. So I know you guys are more up to date, but when you think about it, current events have actually altered interviewing quite drastically. So I think you're going to find there's going to be value in this section for you as well. Now, in this section, we're going to be talking about the importance and the need to match your skills to the skills listed on the job description. We are going to be also talking about the vital importance of networking. And I would argue that networking, because of technology, has never been easier. And it's also a really great time to network if you are an introvert. So I think you're going to be pleased with some of the options that you have. Yes, we are going to be talking about teleconferencing because that is the way a lot of interviews are being held right now, and we usually get a lot of questions about that. And finally, what else has changed since the last time you did this? You. Oftentimes, we don't give a lot of thought to how we ourselves have changed since the last time we interviewed for a job and how those changes affect how we self-market. So we're going to talk about that as well. Okay, matching your skills to the skills that are actually listed. Now, as I'm sure you know, historically, resumes were written chronologically, and even some interviews were conducted that way. So you listed the duties of your most recent job at the top, and then you worked your way down from there. In this resume model, the responsibility was largely on the hiring manager to make a connection between what you'd done before and what they wanted you to do now. All accomplishments were pretty much considered important, even if they weren't directly relevant to the job being pursued. Now, I'm going to throw in a sidebar here. Chronological resumes are still being used in certain instances today. They have not gone away. Don't feel like if you've got a chronological resume that Robin's telling you you need to throw it out. No, not at all. What I would suggest is that you reach out to the Career Force staff and ask them to help you decide which type of resume is best for telling your story. Marnie is here. She teaches resumes. She's got a ton of knowledge on that. Hopefully, I'm going to talk efficiently enough today so we get a little chance to talk a little bit more about that if you've got some questions about that. But in a nutshell, these days, employers want to see directly and quickly the actual experience and accomplishments you have that directly relate to the skills listed on the job description and that make you right for the company's needs. I'm going to add something for you guys that I didn't do this morning, but somebody jumped in with a question, and I'm so glad that they asked this question because I think it was on the minds of a lot of people. They said, so are you talking about dumbing down your resume? And I'd like to say, no, this is a totally different thing. And here's the best example that I can give you to explain this distinction. Let's say you're wanting to sell your laptop computer to a friend of yours who is in the market for a used laptop. Let's say this laptop you have is a really good computer, and let's say it's got preloaded onto it software that is for graphic design. And it's very good software, and you've used it a lot. And it's a fantastic feature of this computer. But what happens if you happen to know that your friend has absolutely zero interest in graphic design? They don't want to do it. They will never know how to do it. The question becomes, is it really worth your time trying to sell them on this graphic design feature when that is not of value to them? So that's the best way that I can come up with describing. It's not about dumbing down. It's about lasering the focus of your skills so they can picture you in the job. So how do you do this? How do you get to that wonderful point of being able to laser focused? Well, one way you can do this is by using what is called a T-chart or a T-table. Now, keep in mind, this is an exercise that it's not that something you're going to create and you're going to email to the interviewer or you're going to bring to the interview itself. This is just an exercise to help you prepare and define how you are the best person for the position. So the first thing you do, of course, is start by drawing a big T on a piece of paper. Next, list the keywords from the job description in the left-hand column. And in the right-hand column, write out your accomplishments or experiences that match each of those keywords or phrases. So in this particular example, which I admitted to, I think I shamelessly stole from Marnie, on the left, it says recruiting team members. Well, this person can say, great. I exceeded all recruitment goals by attending job fairs and sourcing new applicants from various job boards. The third one down is worked with various departments to determine candidate skills. Well, great. I have experience collaborating with hiring managers in order to develop candidate profiles to attract top talent. So they can see immediately, we want this, great, I've got it. We want this, great, I've got that too. So this process will give you a clear picture of how you fit this position. And you may, in the process of doing this, you may discover, hey, I guess I don't really match this as much as I want. Now, where that magic point is as to when you send your application in anyway is kind of a personal choice. So they may have 6 key skills and you can only fill 2 of them or 3 of them. I don't have a magic, do or don't send it in. I would say it will give you a really good idea of challenges that you may encounter if they do ask you for that interview. And it also, if you do enough of these and find that you're lacking in certain areas again and again and again, this exercise of the T-table is also going to help you see, hey, this is where I need to update my skills. It sounds like I'm constantly lacking this certification they keep talking about. Maybe I need to contact Dislocated Worker and they can help me get that certification. So basically, this is going to help you see if you fit it. And then if you do, prepare the talking points needed for the interview. So, all right, I'm going to move on. I do see some questions coming in. I'm going to continue on, but Marnie is taking care of the chat box here, so we will get to those questions. But I want to move on to networking. Now, this usually prompts some eye rolling, I know, but I will say that statistics are consistent. 75 to 80% of jobs come from knowing someone who knows someone. And a sobering reality is that there are many jobs available that will not appear in job boards, and they will never appear in job boards. These jobs are advertised through word of mouth, associations, or company-related websites. So networking and informational interviews can really help the experienced worker, especially one who has not been on the job hunting trail for a long time. So let me give you an example of when this might be helpful. Let's say you want to make a career change and get into something that you have never done before, or like I did, you want to get back into something that you haven't been doing for years. Now, the big question for you folks is, do you have skills that will make you competitive? How are you going to compete with the other people who are going for these jobs? How do you find that out? Well, the best people to give you that answer are the ones who are actually doing the work that you seek. Find those folks. Ask them to review your resume and give you some candid feedback on whether they think that you are out of the box ready or whether you may need to update your credentials. Networking and informational interviews can also assess whether or not you even want that career change. After talking to some people in a field, you may discover the new job is not exactly what you thought it was. That's fine. Back out of that road, head down another one. And talking to people that are doing the work that you want to do can also give you insider tips about where to find the jobs, find out what specifically employers will want to hear. They can tell you what the important software is, if there are certifications that would put you over the top, and in the case of my mentor years ago, what language to use. I kept calling myself a teacher. She said, nope, you're working with adults. You're a trainer. You're a facilitator. So another advantage to networking is that you can find out about jobs before they are posted. So insiders might be able to share things like, well, there's nothing in the department right now, but I can tell you that they're budgeting for a position that sounds exactly what you're looking for, and we should know more in April. And finally, more experienced workers are choosing to focus on specific companies or organizations rather than just waiting for the jobs to be posted. So even just now, as you're listening, think about a company or an organization that really interests you, or maybe even you're not that specific yet. Think about an industry. Research it thoroughly. Find out how it's structured. Find out what jobs are available. Then review your qualifications, especially the skills you have that are going to be valuable in this current time of difficulty. Then reach out and meet them. It can be as simple as a quick phone call or an email. Let them know that you are simply opening the door on a possible relationship. You're not expecting them to create a position for you right away. If you come across a little too heavy-handed, like you're just trying to get them to hire you, that might actually have the opposite effect. But if you're polite and respectful and are simply saying, I'm just hoping to open the door a little bit, get to know you guys, all kinds of good things might come your way. The better and more positively you get to know them, the better your chances of being thought of when the next position opens up. And by the way, I've networked and nothing has happened in the short term, but beautiful things have happened in the long term. Now, I realize, by the way, having just as soon as that came out of my mouth, I realize now some people are in a position where they're seriously thinking that retirement is coming up. They may say, well, I don't have a lot of time, Robin. So again, this idea, it's really, really important for everybody if you're trying to figure out how do I apply all this stuff that Robin is telling me, to make sure that you make a commitment to reach out to CareerForce and tell people your individual story, your individual needs, individual timelines, because that's going to help us help you the best. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to teleconferencing real quick, just because a lot of people are thinking about that. I'm going to take a sip of water so I don't croak too much here. So what else has changed? Well, obviously these days, how interviews themselves are conducted. I've talked to many people in the past few months. They've really expressed concern about having to conduct an interview over the internet, and they're not really feeling confident about the technology. By the way, just FYI, the following tips that I'm going to give you are going to assume that you have access to a computer with a camera and a microphone. If you do not, give us a call and we will be happy to troubleshoot with you. Please do not feel that you're going to be automatically out of contention simply because you can't teleconference at an interview right now here. We can get very creative for you on that. So just know that we will be here and we will partner with you. Okay, one bit of good news about teleconferencing, you're doing it right now. This is teleconferencing, so you've taken a positive first step. If it's brand new, if you haven't been on Zoom with family members and folks in the past few months, I would advise you now to get familiar with communicating online. You do not have to be familiar with the particular platform the company uses. Remember, they're going to make it easy for you. The last thing they want to do is have some complicated process that's going to confuse their candidates and take a lot of time navigating through. But I would recommend that if you've got some time and you haven't done this, choose something quick and free like Zoom and just get used to the basics. Because honestly, once you get used to the basics, the differences between the platforms are not that huge. Okay, here's some brand new information, guys. This is right hot off the presses. This came about a month ago. They did polls and they talked to employers about these fake backgrounds that you can put behind you in Zoom. They're actually kind of cool. However, they're not cool for the purposes of interviewing. They found out actually that employers do not like the fake backgrounds. What they do like is things like bookshelves or kind of unobtrusive art. So don't feel that you have to be fancy with the backgrounds here. The thing that's most important is make sure that whatever background you choose is not competing with you and your answers and your skills and how you're reacting to them. Okay? Choose lighting that is complementary. Now, believe it or not, inexpensive lights that are made just for online video are now being sold, so you might want to go that route. If not, just make sure a couple of things. You don't want to put yourself right in front of a window so that you end up appearing in silhouette. Why is that important? You want them to see your expression, your smiling, your engagement, your eye contact. And if you're sitting right in front of a window, we're not going to see you. We're going to see a silhouette. The other thing probably to avoid is make sure that you're not sitting sideways next to a window where the light is really, really bright, so you're all washed out and it doesn't look real good. So you want to try certain areas in your house and get feedback from family or friends as to what looks good. Definitely dress as you would for a face-to-face interview, even down to the shoes. Now, you guys aren't going to see my shoes today, which is a pity because they're actually kind of cute. But the point is not that whether or not they see them. The point is the psychological advantage to dressing in the entire outfit and just putting yourself in that mindset of being on an interview. Is good eye contact and a smile important? Absolutely. Every bit as important as if you are face to face. Now, the cool thing about interviewing over the internet is the fact that you can actually put Post-its on your computer to remind you of things like smiling and eye contact, and they can't see them. So that's a wonderful thing. Now, this is the one bit of advice where I kind of have to say, do as I say rather than as I do. I have really bad eyesight, so I have to have my big screens here. My laptop, which has my actual camera lens, is over here, so I end up not really showing myself. Hopefully, I thought I was on video. Am I on video? Wow, I can't see myself. Let's assume I am. Okay.
You are.
Am I? Thank you. It disappeared on me, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm being shown. So thank you, Marnie. But seriously, joking aside, I have been in meetings before where somebody has gone over and actually looked in the lens like I'm doing right now. And I have actually felt a difference in how I'm responding to them when I feel they are actually looking at me. So don't forget that. That is so, so important. Okay. And then the other thing too is practice, 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 practice. This is an opportunity to see if you're smiling enough, if you're smiling too much, if your smiling is looking a little strained or frozen. Um, you can do this in a couple of ways. You can set your camera down and you can just hit the camera and you can practice in front of your phone. You can set up a teleconference with a friend of yours and do a mock interview. And then you can graduate up to calling CareerForce and saying, hey, could you do a mock interview? I want to practice. And we'll be happy to give you that feedback. Okay, in addition, make sure the audio is good and nobody can strain to hear you. And then finally, and this is probably the most important one of all, this is the takeaway. Always have the phone number of the interviewer on hand in case there is a technology mix-up and you need to get a hold of them quickly. It happens. We're dealing with technology stuff all the time. So don't feel that if there is some kind of a glitch or something that automatically bars you from being selected. Just give them a call real quickly and move on from there. Speaking of moving on, the final thing that may have changed since you last interviewed is you. So what I'm going to suggest you do is take some time to think about the following. How do you feel about looking for employment now? And do those feelings show? Now, of course, if you're really enthusiastic about the idea, that's fantastic to let those show. That's great. And we talked about that this morning, about sometimes people who are making a career change to something they're really passionate about for a change can actually carry them in and get them hired because they are so dedicated to what they want to do. But if your feelings are negative, if you still have some emotional leftovers from your last employment or some resentment about having to look now at this point in your life, it could be a problem. I'm not saying it will be, but I'm saying it could be. And it's recommended that, again, you reach out to somebody in your life that you trust to be straightforward with you. Ask them if they pick up on any bitterness or resentment or just plain struggle to move on when you're talking about your last position. If they are picking up on some of those things, feel welcome to reach out to us and we can help you find ways of talking about your current job search in a really positive and effective way. Now, next, evaluate your skills. You have accumulated many skills, both on the job and just living your life. Ask yourself what makes you a better candidate today than what you were last time. What have you learned? What have you gotten better at that maybe a younger employee has yet to learn? Don't forget to ask those questions of yourself. Are you better at working with customers now simply because you've been there, you've done that, you don't get so emotionally involved? Maybe you are better at assessing situations. Maybe you become better at being adaptable. Maybe you have become better at being able to rally the troops together to get something done that needs to be done. Think about what you have gained just by being there in the years that you've been there. And finally, what are your goals? Now, they are almost certain to ask you about this. And it's going to be really important for you to have a specific answer. Now, your goal may genuinely be to retire in 3 years. But I would advise you to work with us about how to answer that question carefully so that it is honest, but it's also something that won't take you out of contention. I think having a really good goal of where you want to be in the next 5 years is going to inform a lot of things. It may even inform what jobs you want to go for. So that if that goal is, yes, I'd like to be retired in 2.5, you're not necessarily going for the job that has a really long-term need. Maybe you want to go for something that will allow you to hang in there for a couple of years and then jump on to retirement. Questions like these really do need to be answered by CareerForce individually, so all of the information can be taken into consideration. Okay, I want to jump into, I think this is my last big section, which is mistakes commonly made. Now, these, by the way, are coming to us directly from the employers. This is not Career Forces stuff. This is actually employers are saying these are the mistakes that people kind of unwittingly make or things that can be troublesome. The common stumbling blocks are being seen as overqualified, and you guys didn't need me to tell you that. Losing momentum, just kind of losing the enthusiasm for the search, letting your narrative be negative, and this can happen accidentally without even you realizing, and not updating your skills. So let's jump in here. The most common reason candidates are perceived to be overqualified is that they've listed too many accomplishments on their resume, or they've listed accomplishments and skills that are unrelated to the job that is open. So here's an example. Let's say we have a former restaurant manager who genuinely wants to obtain a position as a cook. He's done the management thing, he's been there, he's done it, he's tired of it. He really just wants to concentrate on the customer, on creating wonderful food, and just go home at the end of the day. Now, this person might be sending the wrong message if his resume includes accomplishments like reducing operating costs by 30%. Now, that's a fantastic accomplishment. I don't know if it's remotely possible because I don't know anything about restaurant management, but let's just say that I put a number in there that's realistic. I'm sure that he's really genuinely proud of that. That is a real accomplishment. But what would a hiring manager possibly think? Would he wonder if this person might be tempted to offer advice to his boss about how the kitchen is run? So a better bet would be for him to focus on the skills that are listed on the job description and not to add other accomplishments that were achieved at a higher level. So again, it's not denying that you've done these things, but again, it's focusing in on their needs. And a lot of times I teach the similarity between selling techniques and interviewing because you are selling them on your skills. And good salespeople will tell you that you don't talk about features and benefits that are of no value to the customer. You're going to want to focus on what they find most important. Now, by the way, a skills-based resume in this scenario would probably be the best. And again, I'm going to remind you, if you're not familiar, that you have got options with regards to how you tell your story on your resume. We will get you that information because there's all different ways of how to tell your story that are going to be the most helpful. Now, it's also smart to think carefully about including unrelated accomplishments as well. Example would be, let's say that on your spare time, you created a model for neighborhood philanthropy. And let's say this is really, really great and it got national media attention and it was modeled by several states. Now, again, that is a huge accomplishment. But if you're going for a job where you would be sitting at a computer and you would be doing kind of dry work each day, if you mention that, could you be possibly sending the message that you would be bored in the job that they have on offer and you'd want to move on in a few months to something more challenging? So my point is, think carefully about how these entries can be perceived, both positively and negatively. Moving on now to the interview, it's important to remember that the folks who are chances are going to be interviewing you are going to be either of the millennial generation or possibly even Generation Z. These are the folks who are coming out of college right now. Now, it's difficult talking with generations because I realize that there's broad generalizations. There's exceptions to every rule. But talking about generalizations now, generations M and Z tend to be highly collaborative and highly team-oriented. I personally found that this was a culture shift that I needed to make in the last job that I had, where it was mostly millennials. I'm Generation X. Generation X tends to be somewhat famous for, we're the loners. Just tell us what to do and we'll go off and we'll do it. It was a very different culture shift for me to realize that I was not in that atmosphere anymore. So with regards to interviewing, if you've been the boss for many years, it can be really easy to slip into boss mode and speak as you did if you were in charge. And a colleague of mine actually talked about working with somebody like that he was not going for the boss job. He had been a boss for years, but unfortunately, a lot of the word choice and just how he came across was definitely boss-like. That can come across as threatening or off-putting. The other thing is just being able to speak with confidence. Now, again, I was in a generation that when you speak with confidence, and I tend to do it naturally. But confidence can be misunderstood as being someone who might not want to listen to teammates or consider their point of view. So that can be a really tricky line to walk. So again, mock interviewing is a great way of giving yourself a chance to practice listening techniques and looking for opportunities of communicating that you are really looking forward to a chance to fit in with the established team. Okay, just about ready. I'm going to speed. Well, no, I'm not going to speed through the next slides, but we're going to move quickly through the next slides so we have time for questions. One of the biggest challenges people report about looking for work as an experienced worker is just running out of steam. Many seekers share that they start out, they got loads of enthusiasm and they got motivation and they've got organization and goals, and then all of a sudden family commitments pop up. Frustration gets the better of them, or they just lose their drive. Honestly, if you're determined to obtain employment, make goals for yourself now, but also seek out a support network that will help you stick to your plan. I always recommend thinking of it as a marathon rather than a sprint. And just like a marathon runner needs hydration and fuel all the way through the race, you're going to need it too. Now, you could prove me wrong. You could snag a position shortly after you start your search. That is cool. Totally prove me wrong there. I will be thrilled. But don't beat yourself up if you don't. Things are really challenging these days, and it calls for endurance. Okay? A common mistake is unintentionally coming across as negative. Now, I mentioned earlier, if you have some residual bitterness regarding a former employer, seek assistance in finding truthful, neutral language to use when talking about them. If a new employer gets the impression that they're interviewing a really judgmental person who's sitting there with a lot of baggage, it's going to be natural for them to choose the other candidate who's excited and positive and enthusiastic about the new opportunity. Now, by the way, this is not to say that you need to create fake excitement. They will spot that immediately. But I always say leave the baggage at the door, bring into the room your skills and your accomplishments and your excitement about the new opportunity instead. Be careful about word choice. The words fired and laid off are not interchangeable. Laid off means that you lost your job because of the organization closed, restructured, downsized, moved, or there was no longer a need for your particular position. A lot of people have been laid off due to COVID-19, and that is nothing to be ashamed of. The word fired tends to be very negative. It's a very emotional word. I would honestly suggest a more neutral term, involuntary separation, which is the technical term for it. I would also highly encourage you to overcome the understandable discomfort and work with our team to talk about those times when maybe it was your bad. If you were fired, do not represent yourself as laid off, because an employer doing a background check may discover the truth pretty quickly. Honestly, guys, being fired happens much more often than you would think. And there's lots of ways that you can address this issue truthfully and positively. Okay, we're in the backstretch here. Finally, take a good look at your skill set. If you've been employed for the same organization for 30 years, you have a solid set of skills that your particular organization needed you to have. However, when you go out exploring other organizations, you may find that other skills might be needed. Sometimes it's just not enough to be willing to learn. I mean, think about it. A hiring manager has two candidates. One of the candidates says, I may not have personal experience with this particular software, but I'm certainly willing to learn. But the other candidate says, yes, I've used this software for the past 3 years in my previous position, and here are my specific accomplishments with using it. The importance of that software may decide who gets that job. Now, you might be interested in going back to work that you've done many years ago. I'm actually running into a lot of that now, is people saying that they just kind of want to hop backwards and do something that they've done, that they were doing 15, 20 years ago. Now, depending on the nature of the work, even a degree may not be entirely what you need to be qualified. I'm going to use an example from me right now. Someone may have obtained a degree and a teaching license in the 80s. But teaching is one of those vocations that tend to change every few years. So if you have not been in a classroom for a while, you will need to know what the current teaching approaches are, what the software is being used, and certainly today, these days, you're going to need to know how to bring dynamic, successful instruction to your students virtually. So there are times when you will need to update your skills. And as I stated earlier, first of all, talking to people who are currently doing the work you're pursuing is a great way to find out where you are in terms of being up to date. We can help in certain areas. Dislocated worker services can help you obtain licensures or certifications. And by the way, we have a new partnership with Coursera that we will send you information about that can help you answer that dreaded interview question, what have you been doing and how you can improve yourself in your last position. I totally forgot. I always forget to change. I've been meaning to bring these up, and I totally forgot to do that. Okay. All right. I yammered on a little bit longer than I had planned, but we do have about 14 minutes here. So, Marty, what are you seeing in the chat box?
Oh, a few things. So, where do we sign in for the class? People wanted to know right at the beginning. This is something that you've already done by signing in to WebEx. So we will take that information that you signed in from WebEx and compare it to registration, and we will do our attendance. So don't worry about that after you've gotten this far. Then somebody asked, how can we send our resume for review by Career Force experts? We will send you the links for every Career Force location. But if you want to go online real quick, you can put in your zip code and find the place that's nearest you. And as soon as you click on that place location link, then you will find their email address and phone number on the right-hand side of the page. All right, we've got several resume questions, but I am going to do some strategy ones here. Recently, we had a big discussion about last position was at the top of the scale. Salary was at the top of the scale, and everything I look at is much lower, and consequently, I don't apply. This is a problem. For another person, they apply, they get the interview, then they hear nothing, not a yes or no. Could you talk strategy on for those folks at that level?
Okay. Well, the thing that immediately springs to mind with the second question about, I apply for it and I'm not hearing for it. One of the things that is popping up more and more is the use of applicant tracking software. For those of you who are unfamiliar, applicant tracking software is a scanning system that employers will use that will simply scan your resume and look for keywords and phrases that appeared on the job description. If your resume has got enough of this match, your resume is going to be moved on to the next level, which is generally when you get asked for an interview. If it doesn't, you won't. So a lot of times, and again, this is why I discussed what has changed. This is actually speaks to how resumes are being written differently now, that they are very, very focused. They are really looking at exactly what the employer is needing. And so I would say that if you were applying for jobs that you honestly feel that you are qualified for, that you at least meet the qualifications to get you into an interview, and you're not getting the interview, I would suggest looking into ATS. I would suggest spending a little bit of time on a website called jobscan.co. Now that's co, C-O, it's not com, it's co, jobscan.co. JobScan is one of the many resources online where you can actually test your resume and to see how it would perform. Thanks, Marty. What you can do is you can copy and paste the job description into one box, into the box next to it. You copy and paste your resume, and it will do a test scan. And you would say, well, in this particular case, Robin, you have matched 36%. And they generally say 80. What I'm going to do there, and the thing that's nice about JobScan is that it will actually tell you where you are not lining up. It will actually list the things that appear on the job description that are not appearing on your resume. And then you can go back and you can tweak it from there. So that's, by the way, that's JobScan in a really, really quick, hurried way. I'll be happy to share more information about that. But my first inclination is to say that if you are sending out applications for things that you know you're qualified for, I think you maybe just take a look at how are you laser focusing it. As for the salary thing, Marty, did you have any thoughts on that when you encountered that question?
Well, I wanted to talk strategy specifically about all the activities that they are doing in their job search and make sure that they are doing a necessary and focused networking, because I think they'll need to get in front of the face of the decision makers and sell themselves for that much. It's going to be very difficult at that level to just be another applicant and get what you're asking for. So
That's a fantastic point. Yep.
yep. So Robin, some folks are talking about medical issues that prevent them from certain jobs and how you deal with this, especially when the application process asks if you're disabled and then gives examples. Do you think that it hurts to put down that you have a disability, or is it better to mark that you wish not to answer?
This is one of those questions where I'm just going to have to be straight up front and say I am giving you my opinion. And that's why I love co-facilitating this with Marnie, because I think we work well together and she adds little things I miss and vice versa. I am all about the skills and accomplishments up front. I would personally say that that's not the time to bring up any issues, any medical issues, or any concerns at that point. What is important to bring up front is you possess the credentials, the experience, the education, the proven skills that they need for the job. If you can do that effectively, then all of the, any talk, if you need, of accommodations or anything is going to be that much easier. But the important thing is to focus at all times, guys. And this I actually have learned to polish from Marnie herself. The important thing is you're focusing on what you can do, not what you can't do, or obstacles or accommodations or whatever. That needs to be the conversation first. That needs to be the focus of this is what the value I'm going to add to your company, and everything else becomes secondary from there. You want to add anything to that? Because I basically just stole from you, Marnie. So do you want to add anything?
No, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Yep. Well, and I gotta say that most of the questions on here really scream out for a more extensive conversation, because we just need to know more to give you specific, individualized advice and strategy ideas. But I will say this one, because this there's definitely more to this story. Do you think employers really do not want vets? And should I leave that off my resume and application?
That's again, that's a personal choice. So many of these things end up getting down to a personal choice. I would say, honestly, avoid the tendency to assume. Because my personal feeling about it, and this is based out of just working side by side with vets in various different scenarios, I totally would hire a vet. They're fantastic. there's all kinds of skills that they learned in their service that I would value as an employer. So this is the problem we get is we get into our own little concerns about the negative perception. We jump to the assumption that they're going to discriminate negatively against me because of my age, because of my vet status, because of my race. And we don't know unless you are given specific information where you know for a fact that these people are prejudiced, you don't know. I find in my own job search, with a lot of the people that I speak with, the more optimistic you are, the more optimistically you approach the job search with the mindset of, sure, why not? Because I know I'm good and I know what I can give them, the better the results, if that makes any sense to you at all. I personally would put it on. What do you think, Marnie? Is there anything I'm missing?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I would. Yes.
Yep.
And then I talk with my local vet rep about
Yes.
specific companies that I should target.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely huge. Yep.
So a little clarification here, because we use this tool a lot. Is the T-table used in a cover letter or for targeting my resume or for preparing for an interview?
Everything. Seriously, this is great. I remember when I learned this from Career Force years ago. It's a wonderful exercise for you to use for everything. So generally speaking, I'll give you an example of how I use it. I see a job description that I want to go for. I'm going to do this immediately before I create any material. I am going to use this immediately because this is going to give me first of all, it's going to tell me, do I really want to go for this? Or are there some serious gaps in my skills and my accomplishments that would possibly not work? Okay, so I'm going to do it first of all to see, okay, do I want to go for it? Yep, I want to go for it. So then what I'm going to do is I am going to write my resume to these points. I'm going to know from this exercise what I should be focusing in on. And again, if my customer doesn't want graphic software, I'm not going to put graphic software on my resume. I'm going to write my resume to the skills that they want. Then I'm going to take the most impressive accomplishments that absolutely laser focus into what they need, and that's what's going to inform how I write my cover letter. And then finally, when I'm preparing my questions for the interview and I'm thinking about the questions they might ask me, and I'm doing all of my preparation for the interview, I'm also going to be looking at how can I find ways to bring up my strengths in these areas they say they need. So my rambling answer to your very concise question is use it for everything.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great tool. And just remember from everything from skill identification to interview prep is building you up to put on a great show when you are in front of that new employer. Okay. Um, do I have to have something to give people or point people to when I'm networking? Like, should I wait to network until I have like a perfect resume or something I can send people?
It depends on it depends entirely on the networking. Now, I went to I went to a couple of different informational interviews in my past that I use as an example. One of them really was just strictly finding out about the job. I thought about a job that I thought I might be interested in, and I didn't know anything about it. So I called up a person who I did not know, by the way, and literally it was a cold call, and I just said, I am thinking about possibly pursuing volunteer coordination as a career move, but I know nothing about it. Could we meet for 30 minutes? I have very specific questions. At that point, I didn't feel a resume was necessary because I was literally just finding out what was the job like. So I didn't have in that one. The other one that I use a lot was a marvelous way where I was actually trying to establish a mentor. And I wanted to go back to training and I wanted to know where my gaps were in my own background. And I did I did have a resume because that was the whole reason for the informational interview. I said, would you look at my resume and tell me if you feel like I could be competitive with the skills that I have? So I gave her the best shot at a resume. And she knew from the beginning that this was my attempt at a resume and that I would probably change it a lot based on our meeting. So again, it depends on what the end goal is. If you're just trying to figure out what a job is, you probably won't need it. If you want someone to look over your credentials and determine whether they feel that you're competitive and you're ready to go, you're going to want to have a fairly decent resume and a fairly decent LinkedIn profile that at least gives them a good idea of where you're at.
Right on. We are right at 4 o'clock.
Oh my goodness, I could go on for days, guys, so we
I
can't
know.
do that. I love these job clubs. Thank you very much. We're going to be sending you follow-up information tons tomorrow. So reach out to those local places, set up a consultation if necessary. Try those mock interviews, and have a wonderful evening, everybody.